Hey change leaders, welcome back to my channel Change Management with 10x Forward. I'm Rocky DeLuna. I'm really glad you're here because I was so scared to be here today. I've been struggling with a little bit of imposter syndrome in producing this video, and I'll share why. In this video series, I'm looking to cover the most popular change management models and frameworks that are out there. We've already covered ProSci. In upcoming videos, we'll also have Kotter's 8 Steps and McKinsey's frameworks as well. But the model that I'm covering today is Lewin's 3-step model. And I've got to be honest, this isn't a model that I'd even heard of until I started doing research for this particular series. So that's where the imposter syndrome kicks in. I began wondering, can I actually talk about something that I have no experience with outside of just theory and some research? And so I'm going to definitely say yes, because the purpose of this video series serves twofold. On the one hand, it's introduction to these popular change management models and frameworks, but also it's about how to utilize AI to accelerate your change deliverables and your capabilities as a change leader. So today's video, I'll definitely be talking about Lewin's 3-step change model, as well as how I utilized AI, specifically ChatGPT, to start my research journey and then get me forward. So stick with me for our From Slow to Go segment, where I'll use ChatGPT to walk you how I started using it as a thought partner to start learning more about Lewin's 3-step model and where I was going to go to from there to find out some things that substantiate what I'm going to present to you today. And if you're anything like me, you're probably already wondering, how in the world are you going to successfully manage a change initiative in just 3 steps? This is not a magic formula. It is a lot more complex than the name implies. And one other thing, just before I go into the meat and potatoes of today's video, is I want to thank you all for sending me feedback, whether you texted it to me, you emailed it to me directly, or sent it through LinkedIn. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be incorporating some of those changes right away. And if you heard on my last video, I talked about my nephew who lived here for his final years of high school. And when he saw the videos, he shared some feedback with me and said, hey, your personality's missing. So if you could just kind of show up with that on the next set of videos. He's like, maybe drink a glass of wine, some coffee or tea. And I'm going to go in that order. So today I'm having a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, delicious. And it's 1,000 degrees in Dallas, so I was not about to drink a red wine, which I would probably have preferred. But anyway, with that all said, let's go and dive into Lewin's 3-step change model. So a couple of things that I'll share on my perspective regarding this particular model. When I first took a look at it and learned about it and saw that there was only 3 steps, I thought, no way, this is like way too easy, way too simplistic. No way this is going to lead to meaningful change or even be specific enough to guide us as change leaders on how we move through these phases. It just seemed way too simplistic. So first off, my biggest struggle with this particular model were the names of the steps. They were freeze, change, refreeze. And as I think about our work today in any industry, I don't think that there's anywhere where you want anything frozen or where anything is in a state of being frozen. And so I really struggled with the ideas and the connotations that those 2 words bring, which left only the one word in the middle, change, which is what we're here to learn about, do, and execute so that we can all raise our adoption, reduce our risks, like we started off talking about in our first video. While I was doing my homework, researching more on Lewin's 3-step model, I came across an academic article written by Professor Burns. Professor Burns is a professor of organizational change management at the University of Stirling in the UK. And so I took a shot, sent him an email, and gave him a little bit of context about this video series. In that email, I also asked if he would be open to sending me the article so that I could use it as research for this particular video. And he sent it like the very next day. So thank you so much, Professor Burns, for that. This article has changed my mind about this particular change model, and I now have clear use cases of how I can use it within my own practice, and hopefully how you change leaders can begin to think of this particular model in your own use cases, no matter if you're in the private or public sector, if you're working on huge community programs, or if you're changing your corporate values. So throughout this video, I'm going to share some insights that I took away from this article, which is The Origins of Lewin's Three-Step Model of Change by Professor Bernard Burns. This is featured in the Journal of Applied Behavioral Sciences in 2020. I'll definitely link to that resource down below so that if you're curious and want to read more about it, you're able to access it there as well. So just from the abstract alone, I'd like to read the introduction so you can see just how juicy and meaty this particular three-step model is and why it's caused such divisive sentiments about it, whether if it's a good change model, it's not a good change model, whether or not it's even Kurt Lewin's model to be claimed, that sort of thing. So this is from the abstract of that article. In it, Professor Burns says, at the time of his death in 1947, Kurt Lewin was seen as one of the foremost psychologists of his day. He is now best known for his three-step model of change. However, this has been criticized for its simplicity. That's how I started off. And it has even been suggested that Lewin never developed such a model. I learned reading this far into his article. Yet this ignores its links to the rest of Lewin's work. Surprisingly, there appears to have been no rigorous attempt to understand the connection between Lewin's early work on field theory and his later work on social and organizational change. This really got me going. So I studied sociology in my undergrad, and I got really excited about the study of groups, how it all fits together. It made a lot of sense to my brain because that's how I used to see things growing up and even still today. So this got me really excited and wanting to dive more into this article. I'll share other insights on this article as we go throughout, but I did want to set that context that this is a contested model. People do think of it as too simplistic because it's just the three steps, but the more you read and learn about Lewin's work and the context of his life, you really get it. So I want to read one more piece from a little bit further in the article that shares some context about Kurt Lewin's life. And this is directly from the article. To appreciate why Lewin, a German Jew, became a social activist, we need to understand that he left Germany for America in 1933 as the position of Jews grew increasingly untenable. Lewin admired much about America, but was appalled by the general acceptance of racism and anti-Semitism, even in academia, and the growth of Nazism. I'll read further, and this is a quote that Professor Burns adds here from prior research, saying, Lewin found strong currents of anti-Semitism, of racism, of ethnocentrism in his adopted country, the US. The quote goes on to say, he feared that the seeds of totalism might grow to destroy democracy in the United States and in the world unless the forces of research, education, and action could be united in eliminating social injustice. He goes on to say, so Lewin sought to apply his research to resolving social conflict, not just studying it. Wow, my mind was blown. This is nearly 100 years ago that this work is being done, that the studies are being done, that Lewin is trying to bring his field study together to show that social change is important, especially from where society was at that point, and that there were ways to do it. To walk us through Lewin's model, I'm going to use something that will help us illustrate this freeze, change, refreeze model. So to begin, we could take a look at gold. It's something that it's a precious metal. It's found, and when it's found, it's in its raw form. It's craggly, it's dirty, all of those other things. But if you want an engagement ring out of that, or you want a necklace, or you want whatever to be made out of gold, you've got to take it from that initial state that we find it in, and then you've got to take it through and change it so that it can become what you're looking for. So that's the change element. And then we finally get to the refreeze part, which is where you've taken what you originally started with, you've mixed it up, you've either added things, taken things away, etc. And then now you have it in its final form that you're able to use it in your current state and for your current needs. I liked the idea of using gold to compare to this because it helped me visualize what that means. If I tried to visualize freeze, change, refreeze in an organization, that got way too convoluted in my head because I'm thinking about all the interdependencies between departments, between individuals in a department, between technologies that are sunsetting and that are, being installed, or community programs that people have depended on forever that are being taken away and replaced by others. So gold was easy, but then all I did was reduce this three-step model into something really simplistic, which is why I didn't like it to begin with. So let's talk about why this model is so nuanced. As I read more in the article by Professor Burns, I learned that this model was not intended for organizational change in the way we think of organizational change. This was really about creating societal change, as you heard me read from the article just moments ago. And as I learned and read more in this article, it got me to thinking, oh, wow, I get it now. So let me, and when I say I get it now, I don't mean like I'm an expert at it. What I mean is I can contextualize it, and I have some hypotheses about how I'm able to apply this for an actual change initiative. So to begin with, I was sharing this with my best friend and a great colleague, and he is also putting together some change management training for his organization. So we were bouncing ideas, and this model came up, and I was like, no, this is way too simplistic. This is how I would think about it. This is before, of course, I had done the research. I had said, I think the way I would use this model, if I had to use it, was if my executive sponsors or stakeholders weren't able to clearly articulate what's going on in their organizations or departments today and what they want it to look like after a change is implemented. They generally know what the change is, but they don't always know how people should behave, how people should feel, how people should think post change. They can just say, oh, it'll be better, or it will be faster, or we won't be wasting time. But that doesn't drive like ProSci is saying to the individuals who are changing. So I thought to myself, okay, this is probably how I could use it in its most simple, basic form, the way I thought of it before reading this article by Professor Burns. I thought I can use it to facilitate a conversation with an executive, stakeholder, or sponsor if they're unable to clearly identify what behaviors, attitudes, feelings, etc., need to be different post the change so that we can attain that high adoption quickly and early in the change. So I would say, okay, let's take a look at the freeze or frozen section. What does your department look like today? But not just the processes. Let's talk about what does employee engagement look like? What are the sentiments? What are people saying? How are people behaving? Are people calling out today? And then we can think about the change itself. We know what generally that's going to be is on this date and this quarter, we're going to be turning on this new platform, or we're going to take away this other thing and replace it with this. The change is obvious. It's known, right? But then the refreeze section, thinking about how we want our teams then to operate with one another. Do we want the same sentiments and behaviors and thoughts and attitudes to carry forward? Or does this change also transform how the individuals need to think about, feel about, execute their work going forward? And I thought, okay, that could be a really good use case at its simplest form. So change leaders, that's what I used to think about this model before I really dove into the context that I got from Professor Burns' article. Now that I've read that article and read a few other sources online, I've changed my mind about how I would approach using this model in a current use case. Because this is really talking about how groups interact with each other in a frozen culture, for example, and change that needs to take place, and then a desired future or refrozen situation, I think about it this way. I think this would have a really great use case if you are in a couple of situations. Take, for example, a company that has gone from a startup environment where maybe you're like 20 people, you've quickly grown to 100 people in a year, maybe 2 years. And in the next year, you're looking to double or triple your size and have that kind of growth target for the next 2 or 3 years. That type of growth is fun, right? When you're living in it, it's a lot of excitement and bringing on people, and everybody's excited to join this mission and vision, right? And shared values for an organization. But the more it grows, the less easy it is to get everyone in complete alignment with those things, that people have different ideas about what that should be. And I've noticed that's especially true when a startup company is going from that was my phone doing some glitter. Anyway, that was pretty cool. I'm using my iPhone as my camera, and I think there's a setting that I have on FaceTime where you can like do certain hand gestures and emojis pop up. So I think that's just what happened. But here's, I think, probably where the fireworks should definitely come in is as we're thinking about the three-step model and that its use was in looking at society and groups in society. I think that this model is really useful and critical, especially when you're going to be doing culture work that's associated with the change or just culture work in general. So, in an organization that I worked in, we started off under one company name. And by the time that I left, we had gone through a name change because the nature of our work had changed quite dramatically from when I started there to when I was leaving. And even the demographics of our employee base had changed drastically from corporate office-based type of employees to out remote in the field working employees with customer-facing employees, things like that. And that would be, I think, an ideal use case for it. The vision of the company was changing. The mission itself, I believe, was changing. As an employee, I felt that our mission was different than from when I started there. So in this case, because it's culture work and there are groups that are pushing and pulling in one direction or another, I think this would be a great use case for Lewin's three-step model. Further in the article and in other research, we're taking a look at Kurt Lewin as a father of social psychology. And so one of the things that's emphasized quite a bit is that there needs to be psychological safety through these changes. And if you are a senior sponsor, executive stakeholder, et cetera, and you're watching this video, this is where you can be the most helpful to your change leaders and change team to get your employees in a place where they're able to leave a certain frame of mind, a certain state of being as an employee within your organization to be in a different sense. This is also, I think, not just when companies are changing dynamically within their own organizational life cycle. I think this is also really critical when you're doing some initial evaluations on mergers and acquisitions. So if you are the company that is acquiring another organization, obviously you're looking at the things that you're interested in, whether if it's talent that you're looking to acquire, if it's a product, if it's financials, whatever the case is. But something that's really important is the culture alignment with your current culture. Will there be things that will create friction during that integration or acquisition timeframe? Or are you finding things that are in alignment? For example, one thing to really look at is your diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging programs at either of the organizations. That's a great place where you can get a great pulse check for the type of culture an organization has. A lot of times, these groups and organizations aren't paid for their work. They are asked to do it on top of their day work. And that really shows you what the culture is. You can take a look at employee engagement scores to see what things the companies value. Is it education? Is it leadership? Is it transparency? Is it credibility? You can take a look at those societal things that are happening within the organization to help during the integration process of a merger and acquisition to make things more fluid, more easy, or if you anticipate that there's going to be quite a bit of friction, change leaders and everyone on the change team working on it, having that awareness, you're able to prepare. So change leaders, I've gone from thinking that the Lewin's three-step model was far too simplistic, that there was no way that this could possibly work for change management in the way that I've experienced it before. But now I'm actually excited to try this model out for an upcoming merger and acquisition, some culture work within an organization, maybe that's looking to either rebrand themselves, and in addition to that, their mission, vision, value statements, things like that. But what do you think? Is it still too simplistic? Is it a little more nuanced than when we started? I'd be curious to know, especially if you all have used this model before in any change initiatives or in the private or public sectors. Leave those in the comments below so that we can get better understanding of its applicable use in change projects today. And this brings us to my favorite segment of the program, which is from slow to go. This is where I share with you the AI tools and processes and workflows that I utilize to accelerate the change deliverables that I work on. Before we jump into today, I do want to start off by saying know before you go. The first thing about it is there's no need for you to put in any sensitive, proprietary, industry trade secret information about your organization into ChatGPT or any other similar platform that you're using. And for our purposes here, creating change deliverables, that type of information is generally not needed. The second thing is, while many companies have started adopting AI platforms as part of their regular workflows, you want to check with your company and organization first to see what policies and procedures are in place. If you're not sure where to start looking for that, you may want to check with your human resources partner or someone in your info security team, technology teams. They will probably be able to guide you in terms of what's in place or not in place at the time. With that, let's go ahead and get started with our first prompt, which is going to be for ChatGPT. Now, what I've done is I've already written a prompt here in ChatGPT to mimic how I started researching Lewin's three-step model. So I'll go ahead and read it, then I'll press send to see what kind of information we get back. Now, I've got to tell you, this initial prompt that I'm submitting is complex. I'm asking for 3 different things. I'm also asking for them to be sent back to me in a very specific format. So here's a prompt that I've entered. I'd like to learn more about Kurt Lewin's 3-step change model. I'll be applying it to an organization that is going through a rebranding transformation as they integrate 2 other companies they have acquired. Please give me a 3-paragraph summary that encompasses 80% of the most important information I need to know about the model. So that's my first request. Additionally, provide a table that includes additional resources where column A is resource title, column B is link to resource, and column C is summary. For column C, only give me 2 to 3 bullet points at most. So that's my second part of the request, is this table to get some resources so that I can do some research on my own. And then finally, give me some questions that I should consider as I begin learning about Lewin's model and applying it to this type of change. And now I'll press enter or send it up and see what ChatGPT comes up with. So we have our 3-paragraph summary about Kurt Lewin and the 3-step change model. We see here that it's taking us through the 3 steps: unfreeze, change, and refreeze. It talks to us a little bit about the change stage. The organization implements the new strategies and processes, something that we talked about. And then finally, the refreeze stage for the 3rd, which focuses on solidifying the changes and ensuring they become part of the organization's culture. This is actually making me think about something that I missed earlier on in the video as we talked about the model, which was about the refreezing part. Refreezing isn't to put something in a permanent state of stasis so that it's frozen and it is no longer changeable or malleable or adaptable or agile or any of those things. Far from it. What it says then is, once we've taken what was in place and a situation that was no longer really working for us, and we've moved things, we've pushed and pulled forces to create an ideal future change, now Let's put structures and supports in place to keep those conditions. So that sounds a lot like the reinforcement part of ProSci ADKAR model, doesn't it? And that's where I really changed my mind about. This isn't permanent, static kind of situations that we're looking at. We're looking at conditions, and we're looking at conditions over a period of time and how long we want them to last or how sustained we want them to be. So then I go on to the second part of my request. I had asked for a table with some resources and with specific titles. So as you see here, it actually gave me the table format that I'm looking for. It titled my table. It's giving me 3 resources, which are Lewin's change management model, something from Mind Tools. If you haven't checked out that website, it's pretty cool. I believe it is subscription based, so you can only read 2 articles a month, I think. Then here are my bullets, overview of the 3 stages, practical steps for each stage, tips for success. We have a critical review here, so something that's been posted from LinkedIn. Lewin's 3-step model explained. This is from the Change Management Coach and Rebranding and Change Management, directing me over to Harvard Business Review for further articles on that. Then the third thing that I had asked for, what are some questions that I should consider as I begin looking at this model specifically for this type of change project that I'm looking at? So it broke it down by phases, which is super cool. For unfreezes, what specific mindsets and behaviors do you need to be addressed? For change phase, what training and support will be necessary? So like the knowledge part of ProSci. And for refreeze, how will you reinforce the new brand identity? So again, it's even utilizing some of that familiar language that we learned in the ProSci ADKAR model video. This is how I used ChatGPT as a thought partner to get started on preparing for this particular video. Change leaders, that wraps up this video, which was on Kurt Lewin's 3-step change model. Again, I want to thank Professor Bernard Burns for sending that article over. That really helped change my mind about how I thought about this model, which I thought was too simplistic. But now I see its use and application in even larger scale transformations that have to do with culture work, with how people engage with one another, and so on. As I mentioned before in the video, if you are someone who uses Kurt Lewin's 3-step model or has used it in change initiatives, leave us comments below and let us know what successes you experienced with it, how you applied it, or even what setbacks you experienced while doing that. If you found something in this video that you can take and apply to your change practice, like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, leave it in the comments below. I'm always curious to know what people are walking away with and that they're looking to try out. If you have any questions or thoughts for future videos, you can definitely leave that in the comments, or you can email me as well. And a big shout out and thank you to my nephew who sent me such really kind feedback, reminding me to be more myself and bring my personality to my videos. Cheers. See you next time.